Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you're doing super well. So in this video, I'm just going to have a little sit down, chatty / story time about my pregnancy, but more importantly, my struggle with HG or Hyperemesis gravidarum, which I believe is how you pronounce it. So firstly, I just wanted to preface this video and say that I don't want to scare anybody into being fearful of pregnancy or birth or anything like that. Just because I had a specifically rough or tough pregnancy doesn't mean that that is the case for everyone. I'm sure you know that mostly people have a very, they can maybe have a little bit of a rough time in the first trimester, but then it's usually smooth sailing. And that is the common. And so if you are wanting to fall pregnant or are currently pregnant, I want you to believe that and trust that for yourself and not listen to the story and think, oh my gosh, what if that happens to me? Or, anything like that, because HG is quite rare. And so I just wanted to share my story mainly for the girls out there who are struggling with it currently or have been through it before, because when you're in the moment it can be quite isolating and lonely, and it is quite a, I guess you could say, overwhelming thing to kind of go through. So yeah, to begin, for anyone who doesn't know what HG is, it is basically a condition where you are very nauseous or throwing up throughout most of your pregnancy, or it could be parts of it, but it is just an intense sickness. And so morning sickness is different, whereas you can feel unwell and not yourself and maybe throw up here and there, but HG is often repeatedly throwing up multiple times a day. It hinders your life. You often can't go to work or go about your day-to-day because you're so sick. And with my story, my mom actually also suffered with HG during both of her pregnancies. And so it is also sometimes thought to be genetic, but it's not always the case. It can just depend. They also don't yet know the specific cause for hyperemesis, but when I was pregnant, a study actually came out, so that was last year. A study came out where they kind of understand it more, and it is believed to be hormonal. And so people with hyperemesis have a lower level of this specific hormone, and so when they get pregnant and this hormone spikes, then that spike is what causes the sickness. People who are already at a base level and just the hormone increases a little bit, it makes them feel a bit unwell in the first trimester, and then it kind of subsides. But people who are at a lower level have this big spike, and that is what causes it. So my story, where to begin? I guess I'll start with before I even became pregnant. So I would say that I was maybe not the healthiest I had been in my life. I was quite underweight, and I was really trying to put on weight. I was trying to gain more muscle, and I was really struggling with that. I had also always had a very irregular period where I would often go months without having it, and would have very irregular ovulation. And so I was also trying to deal with that before I fell pregnant. When I fell pregnant, it was a little bit of a surprise. Even though my husband and I were nearing that phase of our life, we knew that we wanted to have kids soonish, but it did definitely come up quicker than I had expected. And I also want to add that I've always had very low blood pressure. And so sometimes when I would just day to day, I would get a little bit hungry, I would feel a little bit peckish, and within a few minutes I would be shaking and like needing to eat straight away. And that kind of feeling is what kind of that is kind of what happened during pregnancy, but on a much intense scale. And instead of getting shaky, I would get very sick and throw up. Now I know this isn't the case for everyone. Like I said, they don't know any direct cause for HG, but this is just some things that I think in my brain, I don't know, maybe there's some correlation there. I also have friends who have had HG before and they don't have the same things, but for me it just felt very similar, and I wonder, could my sensitivity to those kind of levels in my blood dropping and rising, could that maybe be related to how I experienced HG? So back to when I found out that I was pregnant, I hadn't had my period in many weeks, and so it's not completely abnormal for me, as I mentioned, but it did seem like my period should be coming soon. And so when it didn't, I kept on testing, and then eventually it came out as a positive. And so actually the day that I got a positive pregnancy test was the first day that I got really sick. I had dinner and then felt fine and had a shower and then felt a bit uneasy, went to go lay down, and then threw up a few times that night. So that was when I was 4 weeks pregnant. Week 5 went by without a hitch. It was amazing, didn't feel any symptoms. I was like, oh, maybe it was just a one-time thing. Then week 6 hit, and that is when all the symptoms started. So I woke up in the morning one morning and felt so sick, couldn't get out of bed. My husband had to bring crackers to me, and I just tried to eat the crackers, try to get something down to settle my stomach, and couldn't settle, kept throwing up. And then I would, in the early stages, I would throw up every 30 minutes in the morning, and I knew that I had to try keep something down. So I would try eat something, throw up, try eat something, throw up. And after a morning like that, I would just feel so wrecked. It feels like you have a food poisoning throughout your whole pregnancy, or you feel like you have a stomach bug every single day. And so that first week was really rough, and luckily I knew my mom had this before, and so I knew it wasn't normal. But even knowing that, I would think in my brain, is this what other women experience? Like, is this normal to, like you always hear women talking about how sick they are in pregnancy and how rough it is, but I'm like, this I can't function like this. This is not normal. So like I said, luckily my mom knew about this, and she knew that this is not what everyone experiences, and took me to the doctor straight away. So that was at the end of week 6. I went to my gynae. She checked that everything was all good and with the pregnancy, and then prescribed me some Zoffa, which is a medication, an anti-nausea medication. Now, I'm someone who really doesn't love taking medication, but already at that point I was like, I won't be able to function without something. And so even though I didn't feel the best about it, I just was like, I have to take this, and I have to have some kind of relief, because by that point I'd been already felt like I'd had food poisoning for an entire week, just non-stop. It just kept coming. And just to also add to that, if you're in the thick of HG right now and you are taking medication and you feel guilty about that, please do not. They have tested these medications. They know what works. They know what doesn't affect the baby. And, like they often even say with Zoffa that you should only take it maybe after the first trimester. That's what's more advised. And I took it from the very, very, very beginning. And my baby he's 5 or 6 months old now, and he is thriving, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with him. And yeah, just obviously consult your doctor before doing anything, taking anything. But I just want to encourage you, if you don't feel good about it, it is okay. And whatever your doctor is giving you has been tested, and they know what they are doing. And yes, that is one thing that I would also say, is just get help as soon as possible. Don't allow yourself to sit in this feeling of you cannot function normally as a person, and you're thinking, well, I just have to get through however long this takes. No, you can get help, and there are things that doctors can help you with. And if you go to a doctor that doesn't believe that your sickness is as bad as it is, then find a new doctor, because there are people out there who understand. And I'm so grateful, and I'm so lucky that my doctor from the get-go, she just knew it wasn't normal and put me on medication straight away. So once I was on Zoffa, that definitely helped with the intensity of the throwing up. I found that if I could keep it down in the morning, so sometimes I would end up throwing it up and would have to take another one. But if I managed to keep it down in the mornings, then it would often help the actual throwing up for me. But I would still feel extremely sick, extremely unwell, couldn't really function properly, and I did not have an appetite whatsoever. And I'm usually a very healthy person. I love healthy foods, and I just thrive off of fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. And with pregnancy, I could not eat anything healthy pretty much. I could eat frozen blueberries sometimes, and then I was just eating, I think in the early days I was eating just plain pasta with cheese and tomato sauce, and that is what I could stomach. And again, I want to just encourage those who are out there right now who feel like they cannot keep anything nutritious down and they feel so terrible for their babies. Please know that your body is using up its reserves of like years of you eating the way that you have before. It is using up those reserves to fuel your baby and to grow your baby. So don't feel like now if you can't get enough nutrients or whatever that it's going to affect your baby. Please, I just want to put your mind at ease. Again, I've had a very healthy baby. He was a bit small and there was a bit of concern around there, which I'll get into a little bit later on in the video. But just know that whatever you can get down is good enough, and you just need to do what you can do. So yes, the sickness, of course, continued throughout the first trimester. I really struggled with work. I really struggled with going into work. I luckily had a job that I could do from bed, and so I mostly spent the days in bed trying to do as much as I could, but then also just trying to rest as well. I believe it was when I was about 3 months pregnant is when I had to go to the emergency room for the first time. So I had woken up in the night feeling very unwell in the middle of the night, and I started throwing up, and the meds I wasn't being able to keep down. I was throwing up I think every 20 minutes or every 10 minutes, and I just couldn't keep anything down. And so I was feeling very hopeless, and I just needed a break. And so we rushed to the emergency room. They got me on a drip. Drips are lifesaver, or IV drips. They just make you feel so much better. They of course put medication through that as well, and that brought such a relief. As soon as I was hooked up to that, I stopped throwing up and could actually just breathe for a second. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot that can be done for people with HG. Like I said, you can have the medication and they can put you on drips when it is very severe. But yeah, when I went to the hospital, a drip was all that they could do and send me home. So from that point, it was pretty much just managing what I could. And so some things that really helped for me, again, everyone is different, so this might not work for you if you are currently struggling. I found that if I was able to fill my stomach, then the nausea would subside a bit more, and I just had to keep my stomach full all constantly. So things that help with that, I would wake up in the morning and straight away have a slice of bread, have some rice, have dry pieces of cereal, anything that was easy to go down but would be able to fill my stomach. Another thing that was also a lifesaver was chicken and rice soup. It sounds pretty random, and if you didn't grow up with it, it is pretty random. But when we got sick as kids, my mom would always make us just plain chicken and rice soup with onion and a bit of butter in there, and it's just very brothy. It is super soothing, and I think the combination of it being hydrating, getting some protein in there, getting some carbs with the rice, it was all just an all-encompassing meal that wasn't too rich, and something that I could handle and something that I could sip on, and that really, really made a difference. So when I would have my very, very sick days, that is what I used to eat just on repeat. And during my pregnancy, I remember feeling extremely lonely and like I couldn't really relate to anyone anymore. It just felt like my days were consumed by being sick, and that is all that I could think about. I didn't have any of the hobbies that I like to do anymore. I couldn't eat or drink any of my comfort foods, or I didn't feel like myself. I felt like I was just a shell, and I kept on saying during my pregnancy, it just feels like someone has strapped me to a roller coaster and has just hit start, and it's like I didn't want to go on this ride, and I'm stuck on this thing, and it's just taking me. Like I'm just being pulled along for the ride. And that is truly what it felt like. It felt like I had no control over day by day, and I just felt like I was a bit lost, to be honest. Because when you go through something like this, you get a little bit in a depressive state, because it's something so unnatural to you, and it's something that, when you're feeling sick and your body's sick, it's telling you that something's not right, and so you constantly feel that something's not right. And I would feel terrible when people would ask me, so how are you doing? Is anything better? And all I could say was, no, still sick. Like anytime someone would ask, how are you? I would feel like teary almost. I would well up a little bit, because I wasn't fine and I wasn't well, and like I couldn't even pretend that I was, because it was such a physical manifestation of this, things are not okay. I luckily do have such supportive friends and such a supportive husband, and my parents also were amazing during that time. I would get meals delivered, at least for my husband. If nothing else, if I couldn't eat it, at least my husband would be covered. My husband took on the roles of our life, so he was working, he was cooking, he was cleaning, he was doing everything that we often shared, and that I just couldn't take over anymore, and he took on everything, which I'm so grateful for. My mom and my aunt and my gran would often just bring meals over constantly while I wasn't feeling good, and yeah, like just having that support and having that community around me. Of course, no one can take away how you actually feel, but if they can do things to help take off like mental load or stress, other stresses in your life, because right now all you have to focus on you and your baby and being okay. And when other people can take over those life loads, it makes such a difference. Another thing that helped a lot was trying my best to still do things. And of course, depending on the severity of your hyperemesis, that depends on what you can and can't do. But I just tried my best to still I would have better hours of the day, and so I would spend those hours maybe just visiting a friend across the road, or going to church, or just trying to do things that were as normal as possible and that could get my mind off of it, because I sometimes found that just sitting at home I would feel a lot worse, because I'm just constantly thinking about how sick I feel. And if I was out and about with people who understood where I was at and didn't expect much from me, but I was able just to listen to my friends chatting, or to just, just go sit by the pool and have some friends over and just watch them swim, like it would make such a difference just to get out of the space that I was in. And so even though I wasn't feeling good and didn't feel like seeing anyone specifically, I still made the effort, and I think that made a big difference, and it made me feel a little bit normal during those times. And then when I was about 20 weeks pregnant, my husband was actually away at the time. He was away on business, and I'd gone to my mom's for dinner. I had come home, gone to bed, and then at around, I'd say 2 a.m., I woke up violently throwing up. And so I obviously had my bucket in the middle of the night, throwing up, turned the light on, and all I saw was red. I was bleeding from my stomach. And so I called my mom, we rushed to the hospital, and during that drive, I was throwing up every single 10 minutes, I could not stop, and it just kept going and going, and obviously still was throwing up a lot of blood. I, of course, was pretty nervous, but I did just remember feeling my baby kick about, and I just kept on telling him, we're going to be okay. It's all going to be fine. And that was my first kind of, I guess, motherly experience. Like, I had always, when something scary happens to me, all you're thinking about is yourself. And so I would get anxiety and get worked up, but this time I felt that I had to be calm for my baby. And so I just remember saying to him, it's fine, we're going to be okay, mom's going to be okay, you're going to be okay. And I believed that, and I just thought, nothing can happen, like, something bad can't happen, and I just fully trusted that, and I kept praying into that as well. When we finally got to the hospital, they hooked me up to a drip, they got some meds into me, they got some fluids into me, and thankfully I stopped throwing up. They did a whole bunch of tests, blood tests, and it came back that I had actually tore my stomach lining from all the throwing up that I had done. So from that point, I was put onto Nexium as well, which is like an anti-reflux, anti-acid medication. And so from 20 weeks onwards, I was taking Nexium and Zoffa every single day. I would say the best, if you can call it that, time of my pregnancy was the second trimester. I still, of course, felt sick. I still threw up every single day, but it felt like I would have better pockets where I sometimes maybe didn't feel nauseous a little bit at some point. So I would say that was the best time. Then I would say maybe at about 23 weeks pregnant, I went for my usual scan, and my doctor started to get a little bit concerned at this point. She noticed that my baby wasn't growing as much as he should, and he was quite behind on the growth scale. She thought that maybe I wasn't keeping enough food down, because I already am a small person, and so maybe I needed to get in more, which was a very big mental struggle for me. I felt so sick, and throughout my whole pregnancy never felt like food, and just had to force feed myself. And now to think that I had to force feed even more, I really struggled with that. But I persevered, and I tried so hard to eat as much as I could, to keep as much down that I could. And he started growing a little bit more, but he was still always on the very low side of growth. During this time as well, it was quite a stressful time at work and in business. My husband was going through a lot of changes in his business. I was going through a lot of changes in my work, and I was very stressed. And when I'd gone back to see a scan for my baby, this was maybe in the third trimester, that my baby still hadn't grown a lot, and my doctor was still seeming a little bit concerned. So at this point, I decided that I need to think about myself, I need to think about my baby, and I decided to stop working. I knew that I couldn't keep up with the stress of trying to work, trying to manage being sick all the time, trying to eat enough, trying to do all these things that that is going to keep me and my baby healthy, and work on top of that. It just was not, I was just not coping. And so I knew that was the best time to just stop it all and just focus on my health. That is also something I want to encourage you in, is this is the time, when you're pregnant, is the time that you focus on you and your baby. Or everything else can come after that. And so if you need to stop work, if you need to move in with your parents, whatever you can do that you can make sure that you are at the most ease that you can at this time is what you need to do. The third trimester is also when it began to get really bad again. I was getting a little bit depressed at this point. I couldn't get in the car or drive anywhere. Any driving would make me feel so sick. I think just third trimester in general is quite tough for a lot of women, but just having all of those symptoms on top of feeling sick was quite a struggle. Things that I would do during the third trimester was every day I would try to at least go for a short walk, and it was the summer during this time, and so freshness and coldness was something that I kind of craved, which is weird. I would just envision swimming in cold, ice cold rivers, and that would like make me feel really good. And so every day in the third trimester I would also try to just go lie in the pool. It would take my mind off things and would also make me feel better. When I had gone for my last few scans, the doctor saw that my baby had actually stopped growing, and I was really excited for a natural birth. I love birth and I think it is so interesting and fascinating, so I was really excited to try for myself. But when it got to this point and the baby still hadn't been growing, and it was just, there was too much unknown, and if I tried for natural, he might have not had the reserves to get through it or manage it well, and then it would have ended up in an emergency C-section. And so I just thought, I can't deal with any more surprises after the journey that I've had, and so I just decided to go with a C-section. And my baby was born. He was unfortunately sent to the NICU because he did have a few issues with breathing and that kind of thing, but that can be another story for another day. He is now a healthy, strong boy. He is still a little guy, but he is just small and he is thriving. And where do we go from here? So if you have HG, I'm sure you are thinking as well, how the heck will I ever get through this again? How can I be pregnant again? I actually mourned the loss of future pregnancies during my hyperemesis time because I just thought, I can't go through this again. And now that I've had some time to reflect and I've gone through the whole experience, there is some things that I would really like to focus on before even getting pregnant to try to see if they might help. It's not always the case that you have HG for all pregnancies. It is more likely if you've had it for one, it's more likely to have it with others, but it's not always the case. And so some things that I want to do before I get pregnant next time in order to make sure that I'm at an optimal kind of physical well-being is, one, to be at a healthy weight. And that means for me keeping on a healthy amount of weight. Also to be strong and to have some more muscle on me, which means that I want to be doing some weightlifting in the gym and just making sure that I have some good tone to me. Another very important thing that I need to do is to make sure that I get some kind of hormonal regularity, have my cycles be a normal length and a healthy length. Another thing that my doctor also suggested to me was to do reflexology, which I'm not 100% sure about, but I'm going to give it a try anyways. I also think a big aspect that aggravated my HG was the stressful time that I was in my life, and so I know that I should be at quite a calm space in my life in order to be pregnant again. I'm also going to be working with the doctors that I already had, because they know my story now, they know the severity of it, and so they know that when I need to get help, I can get it straight away. I would also like to see a homeopath. I've seen a homeopath before to heal my psoriasis naturally, and it was a great success. And so I feel like maybe there are some herbs or some natural things that I can do in order to help me not reach the point of HG, or maybe relieve the symptoms once I do have it. So yes, that is my story. I hope that the tips and some of the encouragements that I shared are helpful to you if you're going through HG currently. If you are, I send you all my love and all my support. I really pray that you get healed from it, that it is not your story throughout your whole pregnancy, and that you'll also be surrounded by the support that you need. If you'd like to share your story in the comments below, please do so. And if you'd like to encourage those who are sharing, please also do so. If you're like me on the other side and you have some tips, please also share below. And yes, that's all for today's video. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I'll chat to you again soon. Bye.